So recently, this country, the United States, has been rocked by a litany of issues. We've had 42 million people, actually more than that, without a job at this point. When the employment numbers come in tomorrow, it is going to be disastrous. There have been 8 million more people who didn't have a job that they didn't even include into those numbers going back to April. So we're expecting a certain amount of devastation to take place. However, even before getting to the numbers tomorrow, we know at the very least there are more than 42 million people currently, at least, without a job at this point. That is more than 1/4 of the U.S. workforce, and that number is much larger than that when you take into people who are not looking for jobs anymore, who are doing gig work, who haven't necessarily been able to get cash. People who aren't currently working but are furloughed, basically they are temporarily unemployed, but those people should have also been considered unemployed. There are a lot of people who we are not considering unemployed in that number of 42 million. So consider there's a large part of the population that's not working. We have 100,000 people that are dead as a result of incompetence from the administration that is in office right now and the pandemic itself. We have an avalanche of evictions that are supposed to take place by July, if not have taken place already. On top of that, we still have millions without health care. 1.5 million or 1.7 million that's been infected with the disease itself or the virus itself. We have a litany of problems in this country, to put it mildly. On top of that, you have a president of the United States that is literally, in real terms, declared war on the American public.
That is why I am taking immediate presidential action to stop the violence and restore security and safety in America. I am mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights.
Now, whether you realize it or not, this is a dog whistle. I am protecting you. I'm your president. I'm going to protect your Second Amendment rights. What Second Amendment rights are you talking about? He's being very specific to his base. He knows, or at the very least believes, that this is a black issue. Since George Floyd was an African American being killed, what he misses is that there are 42 million people out of work and that it is multicultural and multiracial in regards to the number of people who are out here protesting. On top of that, you might have a tiny, tiny number, but it is hyperbolic to bring in the military and have the military on U.S. soil potentially killing and shooting American civilians. Basically, Donald Trump has criminalized protests. Barr has expanded the powers of the DEA. You had prison guards to come out and actually be at some of these protests. Cops are hiding their names and flagrantly, systemically abusing the press. All of this was based on this push by Donald Trump to basically rip the chains off, allowing an outright attack and slaughter of the American civilian population. You think you enjoyed or you love the military. Well, you love the military when it's abroad, bashing other brown people and killing brown people. You're not necessarily going to like them when they're occupying your own home soil. In response to the George Floyd murder, we've had massive shows of beautiful protests, organic, collective action, where people came together in order to get across their disdain for this system that has allowed that murder to take place. This is a cell phone visual where all of these people got on their knees and raised their cell phones to the sky. You have another one where all of these people lay down.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Beautiful displays of collective action. Now, the catch here is that you can understand with all of these problems and all of these things that have hit us, it only took a spark. And George Floyd and that disgusting, disgusting video where they casually murdered the man and the other people just stand by and watch, that was indeed the catalyst, not just for the United States, but for the world. You've had protests going on in Greece, going on in the UK that turned violent. You had protests in France that turned violent. You had New Zealand, all of these places. Because all of them, to some degree, identify with the economic devastation, but they also identify in their own communities with police violence and non-accountability of that domestic force. Now, within all of this, liberals are looking for Bernie Sanders. Why are liberals looking for Bernie Sanders? Under normal circumstances, they couldn't stand Bernie Sanders. He's not even a Democrat, they keep telling us. But Newsweek comes out with an opinion piece. Where are Bernie Sanders and college campus activism when we need them the most? Think about that. This came out June the 2nd. Think about what he's saying. Where are Bernie Sanders and the college campus activism when we need them the most? You know what he's talking about? He's not talking about where we need them the most out here on the streets trying to fight for rights, or out here on the streets trying to get a better world, or trying to stop police abuse, or stop police abusing the press, or stop police. No. For economic justice. No, that's not what he's talking about. He's not making the argument for Bernie Sanders and his college activists for that. He's talking about to help Joe Biden get elected. I shit you not. Where are Bernie Sanders and his campus activism when we need him the most to get Joe Biden elected? As if voting is in any way going to deal with the issues that are creating the system to which all of these people are out there protesting, be it criminal justice or, for that matter, economic. Voting for Joe Biden will not save you. Having Sanders assist Joe Biden will not save you. And Bernie Sanders is not magical. There's no magical door in this process where Sanders can say, go vote for X and the people will vote X. In fact, he's lost right much of his credibility going on for these two election seasons, so that's going to be somewhat of a hard pull. My point here, though, is those campus activists, as you call them, those Sanders supporters, where are they? Look outside your window. They're the people who are out there kneeling. They're the people who are out there getting beaten and shot by cops, who are basically getting gas thrown on them as they go out there and push for economic and racial rights. That's where they are. What those people realize, what those people know, is that voting for Joe Biden doesn't get them anywhere in that process. There is no way you can vote yourself out of a situation when the political parties both don't have the tools or the philosophical basis to deal with the crisis itself. Meaning, how are you going to deal with a crisis of racial and economic justice when the Democratic Party doesn't believe in economic justice? I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about economics if it wasn't for Sanders running in the race. I'm trying to put this in perspective that voting is not your way out. Having Obama and all of these people try to co-opt the movement will not change your society, your world. Those were Democratic governors and a Democratic mayor in that city where George Floyd was murdered. These murders take place all over the country. People were being murdered under Obama. I hate to tell you that. Joe Biden was the person who created and constructed the crime bill. He even called it the Biden crime bill, using his time in Congress, the 40 years of putting black bodies in as many prisons as he possibly could, even incentivizing that process to keep people in prison longer. These people won't save you. And from the economic standpoint, all of these people were pushing for the trade bills that got rid of jobs and cut wages. All of them were backing either cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Bill Clinton was trying to privatize Social Security. He would have done so if it wasn't for Monica Lewinsky and the blowjob. I'm making a point to you that all of these people always come out every 4 years screaming about how they're so lefty and they're so this and so that, when at the end of the day, they're trying to co-opt a movement in order to sucker you into voting for Joe Biden, as if the person who literally was instrumental in constructing the very system of oppression and criminal justice that these people are out there protesting, he was instrumental in constructing that system, and we're acting like this person is somehow going to save us. I hate to tell you this. Bernie Sanders will not help you in this endeavor, and Joe Biden in no way will be your solution. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. I have been really hardened by the protests. Honestly, I was extremely angry when I heard Trump give that speech, that unhinged speech declaring war on the American population and criminalizing protesters. I hate to tell you this, but Antifa is just the fig leaf. Antifa is the exact same fig leaf that the Obama used when he said, I'm going to use the authorization of force in Iraq to go into Syria to basically get 500,000 people killed, or for that matter, to go in Libya and to topple that government where they can sell now slaves. It's a fig leaf. Him saying terrorist. Terrorist is a relative term. One person terrorist is somebody else's freedom fighters. These words are sketchy at best, and these words are being used in order to basically turn what we've done to other countries onto the American population itself in a domestic sense. Our chickens, in real terms, are coming home to roost. And regardless of what will take place in the precarious nature of this particular country, this republic, to some degree, we have earned it. We did not care when our military was over there stealing oil or knocking or burning down crops. We didn't care when we were helping using famine as a military tool in regards to Yemen, helping Saudis, a totalitarian religious state, to basically that crucifies, and for that matter, commit genocide in a country we had no business being involved in. My basic point here is we have done things around the world and the American citizenry has just not cared. And now, when the president of the United States has decided that he's going to make an example, basically, out of people who are protesting and using their First Amendment rights, he's decided to criminalize all of it and to consider all of them terrorists, using this notion of fig leaf of Antifa that allows him to basically crack heads across the board. I am sick and tired of people saying, hey, you guys should go vote, as if voting in any way changes or adjusts this situation. The people who are most adversely affected by our society are the ones, believe it or not, who vote the least, because those are people who are the brightest and realize that the voting doesn't materially change the conditions. People act as if Obama wasn't in office for 8 years and that these killings were still taking place. People act like Joe Biden wasn't the guy who constructed the crime bill, or Amy Klobuchar wasn't the person that let George Floyd's killer off when he killed Reyes. And then, not to mention the other people that he shot in the course of his job, up until the point where he murdered George. I'm making a point that voting for a Democrat does not fix your issues, be it economic or, for that matter, racial. And in doing so and pretending as if it does, misses the boat entirely. They're doing this and trying to co-opt this entirely to get Joe Biden elected and entirely for votes. Just like what this guy is saying here in this Newsweek piece, basically screaming for Bernie Sanders to basically go help Joe Biden get elected. We are in the middle of a situation where the president has declared war on the population. And the best thing that he can think of is, go vote for the guy that created the situation in the first place that allowed our criminal justice system to have 5% of the population but lock up 25% of the world's population in our prison. That's the guy who we just need to go and vote for. Joe Biden will not save you. For one, Joe Biden right now is still lying about civil rights. We all know is a lie because Joe Biden said it was a lie going back into the 80s, but that hasn't stopped him from still going into churches doing this. He also came up with the great idea, this incrementalist idea, that basically instead of people being shot in the chest, the center of gravity, this is what Joe Biden wants. This is painstaking, but I'm doing so because I want you to realize that this is not your savior. The notion and telling people to go vote, your ability to change your world, if it was going to go through your electoral system, it would have happened by now. That is not the pathway to which you're going to get those things accomplished. But let's hear Joe Biden. Let's hear Joe Biden give us his great incrementalist idea on dealing with police force.
And the idea that instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person coming at him with a knife or something to shoot him in the leg instead of in the heart is a very different thing. There's a lot of different things that can change. And the idea...
That is criminally stupid. That is criminally stupid. And it gets across that the person who was basically constructing the crime bill and doing crime legislation never thought about crime. It is impossible that Joe Biden took 1 second to think about any notion of criminal justice and what cops do on their job to come there and would come away with that conclusion. George was choked to death. A knee was placed on the back of his throat for 9 minutes until he stopped breathing. That's what happened. That had nothing to do with him being shot. You have other people who were shot in the back, other people being shot through the windows. When cops are in that murder mode for any particular infraction, basically the dispensation of maximum force for the most minor of things that bother that particular cop, they are shooting in the chest, and they're shooting in the chest because their objective is to put the person down. Their goal is not for that person to limp away or to live. No, their objective is their adrenaline is going. They're randomly or just aiming in a certain direction. They're aiming for the chest, knowing that if their adrenaline is kind of fucking with their aim, at the very least, the chest is the largest center of mass with with multiple shots. Nobody in a split second is thinking to themselves, I am going to hit him in the leg, in the thigh, in order to stop my attack. Nobody's thinking that. Nor are they going to train that. That's utterly unhinged. But that's the person who they are basically telling us is somehow going to deal with police violence. And to put this in perspective, take a look at this. Somebody injured the person was extremely ill. Then the cops say, okay, well, bring the guy back so we can get him help. We can get him some help. So as they bring the person back, the cops continue shooting the people as they bring the person back. Think about that for the moment. You have a situation where somebody gets injured, the cop is saying, okay, bring the guy back. And then as they bring him back, they continue to shoot the people with pellets. Like, how is that going to fix that? That doesn't fix that. And we also have this other issue of the economics, right? I mean, basically, the economic part of this is that your society, when it drains resources away from the population itself, be it healthcare, be it education, be it people not having access to the things that they need, it puts people in much more difficult situations when they're growing up. Sometimes they're deprived of basic having lights, deprived of nutritional content, drinking lead water. Those things eat into the person. Those things extend beyond just that particular individual not having access to the things that they need. It goes into the larger system of your society and how much stress, and disease for that matter, is in that society. If you're going to drain away resources, either from healthcare, either from things like Social Security, if you're going to ensure that the wages are lower and you're not going to increase the minimum wage, if you're going to make it where everything in society is so expensive that people are just barely making ends meet, where they're running almost as if they're on a hamster wheel, which is, by the way, the overwhelming majority of our population, what type of society and people do you think that society is going to produce? Meaning people who have $50,000 of back on their backs if they just want the temerity to get an education. Do you think that would incentivize or disincentivize people going to get that education? When you have people not being able to get health care or not having insurance or having insurance but having high deductibles, do you think that incentivizes them to get health care, meaning to go to the doctor, or disincentivizes them to do so? If people aren't making the wages that they need, I'm making the point to you that as you withdraw resources from your society, you make the people who are living in that society's lives that much more miserable. And in doing so, incentivize crime. And incentivizing that stuff, those people are going to have to make ends somehow. And you have all of this drug crime and everything else that these guys criminalize. Not just criminalizing crime, by the way, also criminalizing infractions. Meaning you don't have the money to pay for some kind of fine and then you get locked up because you can't pay a fine. They're just kind of in a penalty box. Many of the people who go along with some kind of prosecution basically were threatened into the prosecution and didn't necessarily get it from a judge case. They got it from a prosecutor themselves. They were too terrified to roll the dice and go into court. You have fundamental problems in the way your country dispenses justice, but also in the way your country deals with the economic situation of the people in the country. The Democratic Party in no way dealt with the material needs of the population for the last 40 and 50 years, instead telling lefties, and for that matter, telling blacks and Hispanics you have nowhere else to go and you're going to vote for us. Which means you had this race to the bottom where instead of having people who would actually push through economic policies that gets rid of some of this chaos, that gets rid of all of this stress and all of this fighting and consternation within the context of your society, all of these the diseases of despair. Instead of having a political system that dealt with those things as income inequality went to the max, what did you do? You had a party that basically still attended to the interests of the 1% and used the issue of Occupy Wall Street, the issues of the 1%, co-opted that into their political language while talking about Obama crashed or worked with local governments to destroy the Occupy Wall Street encampments and then gave 95% of the income to the top 1%. That's your Democratic Party. And you're telling me that these guys are going to be the ones to hold back the night and these guys are going to be the ones to save you. They will not. This liberal who is pleading for Bernie Sanders to help one Joe Biden, it's not magic, dude. It's not magic. he says, there's a part of this. He says, Senator Bernie Sanders clearly showed he could light a fire under the college students by addressing the issues where their self-interest is strongest. Whether it was student loan forgiveness, the path to free college tuition, Medicare for all, other ways to secure a stable financial future, Sanders promoted, galvanized for 2 presidential cycles. That's true. Stop there. Is Joe Biden for Medicare for all? No. Is he for the universal elimination of student debt? No. Is he for increasing wages in the way that jobs are with more agency? No, he's not for any of that stuff. Is he going to increase taxes on the rich? No, he's not. In fact, he's going to have a tax cut at the very least in comparison to what Obama had for the corporate tax rate. Do you honestly believe that he's not going to push through various trade deals? He is. He has. And you believe that Joe Biden is going to repudiate everything that he's done over the entire career from the standpoint of his criminal justice. My point is, there is no magic door. People backed Sanders because he supported those things. They don't like Biden because Biden doesn't. And the best thing that you want Sanders to do is basically lie to those people and try to convince them and con them into backing Biden to do something that he's not going to do. The issue is that Joe Biden doesn't back issues that the majority of the population, especially Democrats, support. And you shouldn't be writing this to Sanders. You should be writing this to the Democratic Party, and you should be writing this to Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and all of these other liberals. And what you should basically have is one paragraph. You need to rationally explain to the American public how Donald Trump really is the apocalypse. But you will not support a policy that has 88% Democratic support, meaning Medicare for all, or the universal elimination of student debt and free state colleges. That has 70% support. How do you expect people to vote for you if you don't vote for these or back these policies that these people back? And again, explain that. And explain that in the context of Trump being the apocalypse. That's what I want to hear. Your entire article should have just been that. The Democratic Party needs to coherently explain to the American public how Donald Trump is going to destroy democracy and destroy the world. However, they still don't want to organically unite the party by supporting policies like Medicare for all, the elimination of student debt, and getting rid of money in politics. They don't want to do that, but Donald Trump is the apocalypse. That's where your ire needs to be. That's where your focus needs to be. Your job is not to get Sanders to back Joe Biden. Your job is to get Joe Biden to go out and get those votes. There's a difference in those things. It's not Sanders' responsibility. If you indeed want those people, you coherently explain that those people back Sanders because of his policies. Right there. It's no magic. If you understand that, then this article should have just been very basic. Joe Biden needs to support Medicare for all. Nancy Pelosi needs to support Medicare for all. And if they don't support Medicare for all, they need to explain to the American public and to the Democratic Party why they would prefer Donald Trump to win, who they consider the apocalypse, as opposed to organically unifying the party by accepting the policy that has 88% Democratic support and the other policy with 70% and 50%. But I'm just making the very basic point on that policy where you have unanimous support. It is ghastly that the party doesn't support it. And in no way should they have any expectation of people backing them when they're not willing to back a policy that the entirety of the party supports. I mean, think about what that would mean. That would basically mean that there is no connection between what the party wants, I mean the people in the party, and what the political device that that party is supposed to represent provides, even members of the same tribe. So, don't look for Sanders to save you. Like, share, subscribe.